Hello, welcome to Cancel Too Soon, a bonus episode of Cynic Critique. I'm Thomas, and I'm here with my brother and co-host, my bro-host, Brian.
Hello.
This is where we discuss TV shows that never made it past 2 seasons. This time, the show found killed is Sci-Fi and DC Comics' Krypton. We're discussing to see if it was destroyed before its time, or should have continued its legacy to see its destruction.
So, Krypton, it first aired on the 21st of March in 2018 and sadly came to a close on the 14th of August in 2019 with only 20 episodes, 2 10-episode seasons. It was created by David S. Goyer and Damian Kindler, and the synopsis, as IMDb has it, I mean, you're not going to believe this, it's very brief. The untold story of Superman's grandfather as he fights for justice on his home planet. The cast, we have Cameron Cuff as Seg-El, that's Superman's grandfather. We have Georgina Campbell as Lyta Zod. We have Sean Sipos, if I'm saying that right, as Adam Strange. Elliot Cowan as Daron Vex. Anne Ogbomo as Jaina Zod. Aaron Pierre as Dev M. Rasmus Hadiker as Kem. Wallace Day as Nissa Vex. And Ian McKelleney as Val-El. Blake Ritson as Brainiac. And Hannah Waddingham as Jack Zer. There are some other names, but might get into them as we discuss the characters later. Did I miss anyone?
Did you read Colin Salmon?
Oh, sorry, because I was saving him for last.
Right.
I read past him on purpose and then forgot to go back. Colin Salmon as General Drew Zod.
Nice.
The famous Superman villain everyone will definitely recognise. Just maybe not here. Do you want to share your thoughts on this show first?
Sure. I know a lot of people said this is a story not worth telling.
Yeah.
But how often do you really get to see Krypton? Really?
Yeah, I know. Very little.
And just how it was before it usually is just destroyed.
Yeah.
That's all we ever really know of it.
Yeah.
So I think to actually get to have a series and explore all that and building to Superman himself, I thought was great.
Yeah.
Because it throws in a lot of references to Superman storylines and, well, like you said, there's Superman characters in here with like General Zod and Brainiac. There are some other minor Kryptonians mentioned throughout the series who appear in comic books here and there. I can't remember their names, but I believe Dev M is one of them, played by Aaron Pierre. He's an actual character, but they're just really lesser known.
Like kind of throwaway, one issue done kind of thing.
Some are from like years ago and haven't really done anything since. I saw some places say that this is loosely based on the World of Krypton story.
Yeah,
which I'm guessing is just mainly for the fact it's just about Krypton.
Yeah.
Leading up to its demise. Was there anything you wanted to...
I mean, I've got my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
As for what it's based on, you mentioned The World of Krypton, which is by Paul Kupperberg.
Yeah.
It looks like it went for 3 years. I've got it credited as 79 to 82.
There's 2 volumes.
But it was just a mini-series. Right, okay, so it came back and did a...
Yeah, there's like 2 Worlds of Krypton mini-series all back up issues sort of thing.
I've also got The Man of Steel by John Byrne from 86, because it introduced details about Krypton's caste-like structure.
Yeah.
And its reliance on breeding and its eventual downfall and the role of the House of El.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Johns' Superman Secret Origin from 2009.
Yeah.
Because that builds on details of Zod, Brainiac, and the growing resistance on Krypton's oppressive council and so on.
Yeah.
And obviously Jeff Johns was something to do with DC Studios' TV department at the time of this show's creation.
Yeah.
So obviously he's going to bring his own work because that's what he's done with all the shows that were made under his rule.
Yeah, he did.
But as for my thoughts on the show, I love how it actually delves into Krypton, the society and culture, which is something you were hinting at.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that it does that more than it does with regular superhero comic book flair. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not just, hey, we're based on a comic, look at our costumes and stuff. Yeah. It's actually like, here's a nice serious story to delve into about culture and society.
Yeah.
And that's always interesting because that's like a very human element, or it is to us anyway, as a planet of culture and society.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned the costume when I was on about the superhero flair, but the costume in this is something I really, really love.
Yeah.
It feels real and lived in and even a little mythic in a way, which adds to that sense of history that they're trying to display with the timeline of the show.
Yeah.
I found the performances to be strong and rarely weak. I mean, there's the odd weak performance. Not terribly weak. I don't think it's the performance, but some of the dialogue is a bit heavy-handed sometimes or a little clunky.
Yeah.
And I think that's from balancing tone, which is what I was about to get to. The biggest issue for me is its tone.
Yeah.
In parts, it feels like high-performance theatre because of how the sets are designed and so on.
Yeah.
And then at the other times, it's like, oh, we know we're a sci-fi show, and there's like a weird tonal clash in that, but I think it's just breaking new ground and learning that balance.
Yeah.
And not many big sci-fi shows, I don't think, have actually been done in the UK either.
No.
This is actually all filmed at the UK, if I'm right.
Mostly the pilots filmed in Serbia.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. I never looked up who did the costumes.
But obviously, because that balance seems off, it can also throw the drama and the action rebellion off a little sometimes.
Yeah.
That's in the core of the show.
Yeah. I'd say it goes from being like, let's say, the new Doom movies, and then the next thing you know, it's kind of like Farscape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would that be
I see where you're coming from. Yeah. Almost campy sci-fi.
Yeah.
But it's not campy, but it looks, if you weren't listening to what's being said, it could look it, I think.
Maybe, but there's some bits of dialogue. I remember there's a bit in season 2, and they're just kind of like having a weird joke and whatnot, and it's like, this doesn't fit what we've had earlier. Like, even the character, it just seemed really out of place.
Yeah.
But I think it's how also Superman can be as a person, and it was Segel that was doing that as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, when he knows he can, he will, like, do that and be a bit, not cocky, but he does sort of throw in a joke when he kind of knows he's won. Yeah. And that is...
In fact, that's probably one problem with the show, actually. Not Segel as a character, but the writing of his character. In the fact that they're a rebellion, he's been stripped of rank, which is a big deal in this universe, which you'll learn when you watch it, because it's all about the houses, the House of El, the House of Zod, and so on.
Yeah.
He lost his caste, which is basically being like, you're a peasant now and thrown to the gutter.
Yeah.
Living in like a liminal space, I guess, of being a lesser than instead of an actual somebody. But it's the fact that his character seems to rarely have a proper struggle.
Yeah.
You know, like, he'll face problems, but there's never any doubt that he can't conquer it for some reason. It's just not written that way.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll face problems that he can't solve every so often, but it's not something, you never feel like he can't overcome it.
I think it's because the actual main act kind of going on, it's kind of unstoppable and continues.
I guess.
But episodically, he's kind of overcoming different steps in that. And I think that's where it kind of loses the whole danger. But there are some sort of downfalls in there every so often that are pretty good.
Another thing I didn't like about this, not that I'm going to keep messing on it, but I thought I'll put it in the middle, basically. It's the geography of the show.
Yeah.
We go from one scene to another in another location, and the show's called Krypton, so the planet's vast.
Yeah.
But most of the time we're set in one city.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of the city now because it's not Kandor, is it? Or is it Kandor?
I thought it was Kandor.
But anyway, the city itself doesn't seem to have a big geography. It cuts from one area to another, but there's no sense of distance, or did they walk there? Did they drive there? Because it's rare you really see any vehicles in it, and that's another downfall, I feel.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of world building. And it is something they could have improved on if the show continued, I do think.
Yeah.
It didn't look like they were going for it.
No.
But it looks like also with 10 episodes, they knew how long they had to tell their story they wanted to tell in each season.
Yeah.
So it feels also like it's done for brevity. It's like the distance doesn't matter. What's happening matters.
Yeah. Overall, I think it's really well done. You can kind of see where it's going.
And my last, I guess, negative is watching it this time. We've watched it in bulk, essentially. And it makes the story seem very fast-paced compared to what you think it is.
Yeah.
Whereas I remember watching it as it aired weekly, loving that gap between an episode. Because I remember talking with you about it as we were watching it when in its original run, going like, what's going to happen next episode?
Yeah.
What does this mean?
Yeah, but again, on a rewatch, you also have the problem of it's a rewatch. You know where it's going anyway. You're watching it in rapid succession as well. It kind of just ends up blurring into one thing.
But, it also truncates, though, because that gap between an episode does add that time in their world as well as a watcher, I think, whether it's there or not.
Yeah.
You kind of add it in through your own experience of that weekly wait. So that's not really a problem.
No, that's just basic TV.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because I remember loving all the questions we would ask each other about where we think it's going, what does it mean, can they do this, can they do that, who's going to show up, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So overall, I find it a fairly unique show as a comic book based property.
Yeah.
One that I really admire because it feels quite brave in its ideas.
Yeah.
I don't think it was ever dull.
No.
Which for me, some political themed things can feel a bit dull, but this one really felt like it was going somewhere.
While you're getting on with that, can we just say this is not Game of Thrones in space?
No, it's not. No, not even close.
I didn't like those criticisms.
No. I think they're very uncalled for. Like, not for, it just feels like they're not actually watching the show. They've gone like, oh, it's like politics and there's houses.
Yeah.
So they're like kingdoms, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that must be Game of Thrones. It's not.
No.
I mean, people won't agree with this. This is actually good and Game of Thrones isn't. At me, I dare you. Because I watched all of Game of Thrones just before it aired its final episode, and it was like hitting my head against a brick wall every hour of it. Why did I finish it, you probably ask? Because I had nothing better to do with my time. And I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
But no, this show, I never found it to be dull. It always felt like it knew what it was doing as well.
Yeah.
And I loved that it was something deeper to the Superman lore and mythos.
Yeah.
And I loved when it mentioned things from the Superman lore and mythos. They never felt out of place or like shallow throwaway lines like, hey, look, we know the comics, here's one of these.
Yeah.
You know?
And people will probably say, why are these threats here now? And it's like, well, Brainiac is something that's been around years.
Yeah.
He's kind of always there. A few other things as well like that. Doomsday. Yeah, I'm not really spoiling anything in this show.
No, he's teased quite early, I believe, in season 1 and becomes a bigger factor.
And like, you get his origin here. And again, in comic books, he's years old as well.
Oh, yeah.
And from Krypton. He's made there.
In fact,
he's born there. You know, the only one you can really criticize is kind of like General Zod. Why has he gone back here? You know?
Yeah. But you learn that.
Yeah, he has his reasons.
Yeah.
And he's a really complex character and really well done here as well.
In season 1, I feel like you're rooting for him.
Oh, yeah.
As well, which is a credit to good storytelling, I think.
Yeah.
But the thing with Zod is he's never a true villain, I don't feel, anyway.
No.
Is he misguided? Yeah. Does he have his reasons of believing, and do you believe that those reasons are kind of good? Yeah.
Yeah.
When he's written, right?
Yeah.
But this is my favourite live-action General Zod. I suspected it before we rewatched it, but on rewatching it again, it confirms it for me.
Again, it's like you have a lot more time with him.
Yeah.
And they've really got to put you on his side at times as well.
Yeah.
But when he does something, you know the reasons why. Like in a movie, he's really simplified into what he is and what he does. You know, like Zack Snyder's version, you know what he's doing. You kind of understand why he's doing, but there's not enough time for him to feel like a real complex character who actually has to question why he's doing it himself either. He just does it. You know, and like here you get a lot of time with him to understand it.
Yeah.
People questioned why, like, we've already had Smallville that went and did like Superman's, like, that's Superman's origin, you know, like.
Yeah.
But the thing with Smallville was that's a time period that gets explored anyway. So, but it was good to see that in Smallville and see Superman's actual development, even though it went on for 10 years.
Yeah.
But here it's like, this isn't about Superman's origin. No. This is about Krypton's downfall.
Yeah.
And characters from Superman, like, their origins as well.
Yeah.
Like we said, Brainiac and Doomsday and other stuff. It's going into a lot of unexplored stuff there. So even between planets, I guess, like, you get a bit of politics and space stuff.
But yeah, it's not so much about, not about being an origin to Superman at all.
No. It's understanding his lineage, really. Where he comes from, really. And
there's a lot of good Superman storylines where they dig a little into Krypton's like lore or their like societies and cultures, but it's never really explored in depth. So this show was doing that in a pretty good way. I was looking forward to seeing where it would have gone.
Do you feel like we should discuss where it could have gone?
Do you want to not talk about what it did do before we go where it should have gone?
All right, what did it do?
It was a great prequel and origin story of Superman.
Is there things you want to mention, like, specifically?
Well, for season 1, That was about like the downfall of the House of L.
Yeah.
Seg loses his parents in the pilot.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name now of
Their parents.
Yeah.
His parents.
They end up being exterminated pretty much in the first episode.
Yeah.
And so he's left with just his grandfather to help him, Val-El.
Yeah. In a way, it's kind of like a strange mirror of Superman's origin.
Yeah, I think that was the idea.
Yeah. Like, he gets his parents taken, but he's old enough to have known them.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of having to find out how to be part of the House of L, I guess, and become something of a hero on his own planet.
Yeah. And with the possibility of having to join another house to save his own worth.
Yeah.
Because of the caste system.
Yeah.
Because he's got like 2 love interests, isn't they, in the show? There's Lighter Zod, played by Georgina Campbell, that most people would recognise her as the lead in Barbarian.
Yeah.
So she went places. But then there's also Wallace Day, who plays Nyssa Vex, and she's a junior magistrate, the daughter of Darren Vex. And obviously he's caught in the middle of them because they... And what's great is both those women, I feel, reflect something of Superman's character.
Yeah.
Because Wallace Day, being a junior magistrate, she, I guess, honours the legality reasons behind certain actions and so on. Whereas Lighter Zod is a soldier. So she sees the combative side and when to fight, which is also something Superman has to deal with. So the fact that Seg-El's dealing with these 2 other sides, that's reflected then in him and how he chooses to deal. And I think he handles that really well. And he kind of becomes a leader of his own as the rebellion goes on through season 1.
Yeah.
So Zeg basically finds those qualities in his leadership. And I guess that's then part of the character that gets passed down to Superman. You know, a legacy type of thing happening, family dynamics and so on. But it never specifies which one of them women that Seg-El will eventually end with, I don't feel. It left it... I think it would have confirmed it later. I don't think it was ever going to be the one that we think. Do you know what I mean?
I think it does.
Yeah? Okay. I disagree. Well, I know what you're getting at. Seg eventually in season 2 has a baby with... Is it Nyssa? I just said the name and I forgot it.
Nyssa.
Yeah, and that is Jor-El.
Yeah.
But I can't help but feel that maybe he would have ended up with Lighter. I don't think... It felt like a show that weren't playing for obvious all the time.
Maybe.
Also, I think this is the best version of Brainiac we've had outside of comics thus far.
Yeah.
And unless he is showing up in...
You mean live action, don't you?
Yeah, I guess.
Because then you've only really got like Smallville to contend with.
But I think overall even, I like his like physicality, his presence, and just the performance by... God, I've already said his name.
Blake Ritson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just a brilliant performance overall. A lot of makeup time.
Yeah.
In fact, I have that somewhere.
I think it was like 7 hours.
I've got 4 to 7 hours. Yeah. So that's a big time when you're filming for what can be 12-hour days.
Yeah.
But obviously, I guess they'd film his parts at the end of the day after he's done his makeup.
Yeah. Yeah, he does look good. Comic accurate.
But yeah, they synth his voice as well quite well to make it sound kind of haunting in a way. The one thing that I don't quite agree with is what David Goyer said.
Which was?
He said apparently it's 200 years before Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Right, because he originally wanted this to be a prequel to Man of Steel.
Yeah.
To explore Krypton. That's the reason the Krypton scene lasts so long at the beginning of Man of Steel, because he wanted to try and explore that world a little more the best he can, because he's quite fascinated by it.
Yeah.
But 200 years seems like a big, big gap in terms of time.
But in a show with time travel.
Yeah, I know, but you can't change when Seg-El was born, surely, in that 7 to 8 year plan that he had for this show.
You can move him forward.
What do you think they would have?
They were on about doing big time jumps, so I haven't seen anything about that.
What?
While I was looking it up. About the big time jumps that they were going to do, because they were supposed to, they were going to do like God, how many years or something they were apparently going to do, but I couldn't find anything about that.
As in time jumps, or how long the show would have gone for?
Time jumps.
Oh, I don't know.
It won't go for 20 years.
Could have.
Well, probably. But I doubt it. Couldn't make 2.
But Blake Ritson also described his character of Brainiac as being a dark version of Noah.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of cool. I guess that is a good likeness to what Brainiac does as a character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what does he do?
He kind of harvests planets.
Yeah.
Saves a little city that bottles their culture, or so he believes, and off he goes after destroying that planet to move to a next. Also in season 2 we got a great reoccurring character with Lobo.
Yeah.
Who's now going to be played by Jason Momoa in the Supergirl movie to James Gunn's universe of DC when that happens.
Yeah.
But I really like Lobo in this. I think he's in 4 episodes, the first 3 and then...
The last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it weren't just this show that got cancelled. apparently, from what I've been reading while I've been looking into it, but I don't ever remember anything at the time, Lobo was supposed to be a spin-off show.
Yeah.
And I'm a little gutted because I really liked him as Lobo.
Yeah.
In fact, I've met the actor and had him sign an image of Lobo.
Yeah.
Emmett J. Scanlon.
Yeah. I don't really
nice
know.
Guy.
Yeah. I don't really know what the series would have been with his character.
I guess just a fictional Dog the Bounty Hunter, just going around planets and bringing people in, right?
Yeah.
You can have a lot of fun with that, especially with his character. Yeah, for those that don't know, but Lobo he's kind of like a rogue Hell's Angel crossed with Deadpool.
Yeah.
In the fact that he can't die, he just regrows.
Yeah. And he's a bit weird.
Yeah. He calls himself the main man. He has his own swear word in the Bastiche, which I think it was just to get through comics code more than anything, to make him seem like a hard guy.
Yeah.
And in some comics, he has quite a fascination and love interest with dolphins.
Yeah.
So, not in the show.
No.
But not necessarily not in the show. We just never got it depicted. But he's a good bit of fun, I think, in the show when he shows up.
Yeah.
He's a really great presence on screen.
He's a bit of a strange one for this show, though. Like, he doesn't really feel like he's part of this show.
And that's where the tone thing comes in that I mentioned in my thoughts as well. Because he's kind of like larger than life and...
Yeah. Kind of too funny.
Yeah.
And weird. And then this show then hits back with serious. And it's just really bizarre.
But I think that's what makes him also a great addition.
I'm going to say that is just the world of comic books anyway. So I've got Adam Strange in this as a main character.
Yes, yeah. We haven't really said why he's there.
No.
I'll let you explain it.
Because Adam Strange in this is apparently supposed to be Booster Gold, time traveler. Anyway, in this, Adam Strange, he ends up going back in time to Krypton to save Superman because something happens and Superman, pretty much you get Superman's cape in this, and that's like disappearing throughout the series.
Yeah.
I don't really remember seeing it much in season 2 though.
You don't, because it changes, if you remember, at the end. No, is it at the start of season 2 or at the very end of season 1?
Something like that, yeah. It just kind of, time has changed completely. So this show like really had to get back on track, I guess, to saving Superman, because they kind of forget about it, I feel.
Well, Adam Strange and Segel kind of split up their missions in season 2.
Yeah.
Segel's more on like his own little personal quest, I guess, of trying to stop Brainiac.
Yeah.
Whereas Adam Strange becomes a little more part of the resistance with Val-El.
Yeah.
In trying to stop Zod.
Yeah.
Because Zod becomes like a big threat to an oppressive nature in season 2 of Krypton, which is quite interesting. Like, because he goes from rebel in season 1 to oppressive leader in season 2.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the big contrast in how it flows. And I think it's done really well. I was really looking forward to seeing where this would have gone.
Yeah.
Is there anything more you want to say about this show, or do you want to just say about where it would have gone?
There are a few things, because I did mention how there are like references to Superman and the larger DC.
Oh, yeah. Go through them.
I've mentioned like Doomsday, and you get like a episode focusing on his origin.
Oh, I really like that as well.
Yeah, where you just see a Kryptonian known as Dax Baron. Keeps repeatedly killed.
Played by
Stasner.
Yeah, from Supergirl, the TV show.
Yeah, and then he's also in Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon.
Yeah.
But we don't want to talk about that. But we get a lot of Doomsday, like seeing that as a weapon.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a first. And you get to see like just that get killed every so often, which is fun. But yeah, you get a whole episode focused on that. But you also have an episode that I won't really say how, just because we get to see the parasitic plant known as Black Mercy.
Okay.
Which is used in Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which is one of the biggest Superman storylines.
Yeah. But just a one-issue thing, like the versus the Elite.
Yeah.
Well, what versus the Elite's based on that we discussed the other day.
Yeah. And it's just cool to see stuff like that as well as like the characters, because it's Black Zero that's mentioned in this as well.
Yeah, Jack Zer used to be the leader of Black Zero.
Yeah.
I believe.
So a lot of Superman mythos just thrown in. I personally really like the mention of Flamebird. That's just me. Flamebird and Nightwing are known as Kryptonian creatures, and then also like vigilantes like Batman and Robin type. The Batman characters, most people probably know him as Nightwing, gets the name from Krypton myth, or legend, shall I say.
Passed to him by Superman.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you read later stuff or watch other things, which upsets me.
Also, can I just chip in? You mentioned the Black Zero.
Yeah.
I said it's led by, or was led by, Jack Sir.
Yeah.
Who appears as a main in season 2.
Yeah.
She's a reoccurring in season 1. That's played by Hannah Waddingham from Ted Lasso. She's the woman in charge of is it Richmond?
I think
the
so.
football team in that?
Yeah.
I don't know. And she was in The Fall Guy. I think she'd been in Game of Thrones as well, to be honest.
I don't know.
But Jack Sir is a comic book character.
Yeah.
They gender swapped them in this, but it doesn't matter at all, I don't feel.
No.
Jack Sir, if I'm right, were they the character created for the Superman the Animated Series in the 90s based on Zod? Because they couldn't do Zod for some reason.
I believe so. If they weren't created for that series, they just took the name and used it as like a Zod type.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And they used to normally go around with a woman
Yeah.
in comics. I forgot her name.
I don't know as well. Damn.
I don't think it's Ursa, is it?
No. Anyway.
But yeah, Jack Sir's a comic character, and I like the fact they throw them in and some of the stuff that you've mentioned, and they don't make a big deal about it or like, oh, here's an Easter egg.
Yeah.
It just feels like it is part of the world, and I love that. I much prefer that sort of name dropping and uses than like, hey, that thing in the background. That's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and speaking of all that sort of stuff, like when they were promoting this show, they kept going on about Hawkwoman was going to be in it.
Yeah.
They seemed really fixated on how they're going to use Hawkwoman.
Yeah.
And it turns out they couldn't fit her into either season plan and just took her out.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything with that. So they just tried promoting a show and saying Hawkwoman's going to be in this, and then you watch it and go like, Hawkwoman wasn't in that, and then they're like, we didn't have room for it. So I'm kind of glad they took it out because they just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's pretty cool. Just admitting that they don't have room for it, I think that's pretty good. Music on this is by Pina Toprak.
Okay.
She's done quite a few I say quite a few, but like I think her score on this was really good. That you get like some traditional Superman sort of themes, and it really fits the sci-fi world they've got and of Krypton, and I think she did a really good job with it. The other stuff she'd worked on was Stargirl, the DC TV series.
Okay. Also under Jeff Johns' rule, so it was based on Stargirl. Yeah.
And then she did the Captain Marvel movie, which I honestly couldn't tell you what that went like.
No, I couldn't.
Music-wise, but that's a problem I have with like nearly every Marvel property.
Yeah.
And then I'd forgot this series existed, but the animated Tomb Raider, The Legend of Lara Croft animated series.
Oh, I'd forgot that existed.
Yeah. If there's anything else I missed off a thing, I didn't recognise it by name. She did a great job at capturing the sound of Krypton, I guess.
Was that all you wanted to say about things that show up from the comics that you clocked?
I believe so.
Okay.
There's probably a lot more I could have gone on about, to be honest, but not here to... Well, I am here to do that, I guess, but I don't want to get too bogged down. Like I said, there was quite a few Kryptonian names, but I don't really feel like they're worth noting because they were just...
Background.
Yeah, background in the show and kind of background in the comic book as well, really. I'm quite surprised.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think you got the ones that I would have brought up, so...
No.
As for something to add, I'm pretty sure, watching it this time on episode 5 of season 1, I'm pretty sure I can hear the director going, "That's your cue." I replayed it.
Yeah.
And I can't... That's all I could hear, though. And then somebody walks into frame, and I'm pretty sure it's the director saying, "That's your cue."
Yeah, it sounded like that to me.
Yeah.
I went on Goofs and everything for the episode, the series itself.
Yeah.
I haven't found any information on it. I think I Googled it to see if anyone else...
I tried.
And there's no one clocking that, and I was just like, usually there's someone who really loves pointing this out. But not here.
No. I mean, it was quite a niche show anyway.
Yeah.
And once a TV show gets cancelled, I don't feel many people are interested in watching it then. They're like, oh, it was cancelled, it must not be very good.
Yeah.
Whereas, for what I have on it, I mean, I didn't scour every review anyway.
No.
But IGN called Season 1 a rich expansion of the Superman mythos, ambitious, well-acted, and a dramatic view into a previously neglected corner of comic book series. That I quite like and agree with. Screen Rant described it as the best comic book TV series you're not watching. Hollywood Reporter, mind you, said, confused, unfocused, and a little campier than its comic book roots, adding, with a viewership drop by its second season, it's clear many casual comic book fans fell away. So the general consensus is that hardcore fans quite like the deep dives, I guess, and that richer lore that's being explored that you don't normally get to see, whereas the more casual viewers were just like, yeah, it's a bit dense or confusing for whatever reason.
That's something I always think about with comic book stuff. Like, when you look at the viewing figures or like how much money it makes and all this sort of thing, I always think like, but what percentage of that is the comic book reader?
Not as much.
Yeah. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, how many of them
actually stayed
are invested in the actual source material it's from, like the comic books and stuff like that, and I'll never know.
My understanding that, I can't think where it came from, but I'm pretty sure for like your Marvel films and stuff, only about 10% of the profits they're making is from like comic book people, if not less than that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm guessing that's the similar sort of people with TV shows watching.
Yeah.
Because they're reading comics, that's their thing, so they're not watching the films and the TV. I feel we're a little more niche. We're kind of trying to cover as much as possible of anything narrative and fiction based.
Yeah.
So, like, if there's a story there, we'll be like, oh, that sounds interesting, let's follow it there. So,
I thought on average it was more like 5% of comic book readers are the actual like people who are watching films and stuff like that. I don't know how they work that percentage out.
I don't.
I think it might be. I think it might be from like the comic book sales themselves, and then they kind of work that into how much money that is into the movies. Growth.
I would imagine there'd been like data taken somehow, polls and stuff done or something at premieres or whatever.
That'd be weird.
Because obviously I just mentioned the viewership drop.
Yeah.
The premiere, apparently in the US, only US, had 1.32 million, which doesn't sound a lot, but I believe that's quite good for a sci-fi network, for the sci-fi network where it was on.
Yeah, I think so.
That dropped to 1.07 million by episode 2.
Yeah.
But by the end of season 1, they're at 0.56.
Yeah.
So just over 500,000. And then it opened to season 2 with less than 500,000 with 0.48 million. And then it ended terribly in views. It dropped to 0.29 for its penultimate episode, and its finale only brought 0.06 back because it only garnered 0.35 million views. So I'm actually quite pleased that I spent the money on getting the DVD box sets when they were available, because this is honestly one of my favourite comic book based shows, and it's for the fact that they're not adapting a comic book story. They're saying, let's explore the comic book world a little further than it's ever gone.
Yeah.
And that is something I love this show for.
Yeah.
Anyway, shall we go into where it could have gone or was going to go?
Yeah.
Do you have it?
I have a few things.
Yeah, go on then.
But
I'll let you start, and then I'll bring in anything that I've got.
I don't have like hardly anything really. I'll go with the obvious one that's actually sort of hinted at. You have the Omega symbol.
Yeah.
There's quite a few speculation about this because there's like some flying armada coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Speculation on that parademons due to the Omega symbol and dark side. Some believe it's the like Ran and Thanagar war, which is obviously like a Hawk man, Hawk woman.
Yep.
They tease like Hawk woman before they even
and you've got Adam Strange, who his story normally revolves around that war.
Yeah.
And we just got given his jetpack and like actual comic book attire by the end of season 2.
Yeah. But apparently the Omega symbol is actually to do with a team known as the Omega Men. Cameron Cuff apparently confirmed that.
Yeah.
And they're very niche.
Yeah, I don't know much about the Omega Men. I know of them, but I couldn't tell you a thing about them. So that to me screams their niche, because I wouldn't say I'm the biggest DC comic book fan. But
no, but when you hear something and you don't really know much about it, you're kind of like...
That's niche.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think them being a lesser known team would have really worked in this show as well.
Yeah.
Like they could have done quite a bit with that. That'd probably been good. But like I said, a lot of people speculate like dark side due to the Omega symbol and the flying people possibly being parademons. I don't know. I don't really feel you get a good enough look at them, but they are winged, so they could be even Thanagarians. Yeah. So, which are the Hawkmen. Apparently, season 3 was going to be loosely based on the New Krypton story.
Okay, that's not what I've got.
Which, that didn't make much sense to me, because New Krypton, the only comic book storyline I know of New Krypton was from like around 2009, and that is due to the Bottle City of Kandor.
Yeah.
And they kind of get a repopulace of a Krypton, and they send it to like another planet, and do have like a New Krypton. But that didn't really make much sense to me as being next season, but that could just be me. What is it you had anyway? Okay,
this is where it gets weird. I'll start from the top anyway with my notes. Apparently there was a 7 to 8 year arc mapped out at the start of this project by Goya. He envisioned a long saga involving time travel, history-shaking events, and core mythology spanning 5 or more seasons, possibly extending to 7 or 8. In fact, the actor that played Brainiac, Blake Ritson, confirmed Goyer shared a properly insane, that's his quote, properly insane, architecture that would span at least 6 seasons. Then, for season 3, apparently one of the showrunners, Cameron Welsh, he's a producer on the show, said that one point season 3 would have focused on was a young Jor-El in modern-day Russia, being raised under Brainiac's thumb, possibly grappling with emerging superpowers and moral ambiguity. So it sounds like they were taking the Red Sun storyline of Superman and merging it in there a little.
Yeah.
The Ran-Thanagan War, which was Nissa's cliffhanger, which ties to that, involving the Omega Men, which is what you just said. So that to me basically says that it is the Hawkmen and not parademons.
Yeah.
Because they're the Thangarians, aren't they? The Hawk people.
Yeah.
Additional arcs would have been bringing characters like Adam Strange, Zardath, Doomsday, Red Kryptonite Virus, X, and an Oracle AI, and possibly the Eradicator into season 3. They're what I've found, and apparently them 3 points I just mentioned there were apparently outlined for season 3 by Cameron Welsh.
Right.
So
quite big stuff.
Yeah, I think season 3 would have been
ambitious
and epic.
Yeah.
Like really good.
Or a lot going on.
Maybe, but there's already quite a lot going on with how it spans across, and that would have, although it says season 3 arc, that sounds like something that would have stretched across too to me.
Yeah.
That Ran-Thanagan war, that seems to be forever going.
Yeah.
So...
I don't think there's an end to that war. Every time you hop into Adam Strange's story, he's always there.
I wouldn't have minded if they'd have introduced, I can't remember the species name, but Sodam Yat's one of them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Daxamites?
I think so.
I think they actually get mentioned in season 1 or 2 somewhere now I've said it, because I feel like I've heard the name more recent. Maybe. But that could have been me doing my research, trying to find their name and then forgetting it.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Daxamites, for people that don't know, are very similar to Kryptonians in strength and whatnot.
And power set. If I'm right, I think he's a Daxamite. He's in Supergirl, right? Their version of him who wore the red.
Mon-El?
Yeah, was he not a Daxamite in that show?
Don't believe so.
Oh.
I don't know. It could have been. I know Mon-El isn't really Kryptonian, is he?
No.
I think he could be Daxamite.
I'll just give it a quick Googs now so we're not falsifying our information.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a Daxamite.
Yeah.
He comes from Daxam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded seeing some of them in Krypton. I wouldn't have minded actually if they'd have put a Green Lantern in there at some point. If you're going to do the Thangarian War, that's a perfect place to cameo a Green Lantern.
Yeah.
And speaking of Green Lanterns, we've actually got one in this show anyway.
Yeah.
Because the upcoming Green Lanterns TV show from DC stars...
Aaron Pierre.
Yeah.
There's Jon Stewart.
Yeah. If you want to see him do something pretty Jon Stewart-like, I guess, watch the Netflix film Rebel Ridge. I'm not one to recommend Netflix for things, so when I do, assume it's good.
Yeah. Back on with our Netflix recommendations that we'll never get round to. No. It's been over a year now.
Yeah, it has. But yeah, that's the reason. They're where I saw season 3 we're going to add. I mean, it just said additional acts for about bringing characters like Adam Strange, Zardath, Doomsday, Red Kryptonite Virus X. And obviously with how the show went with the Hawkgirl thing, probably not have happened in that season.
Yeah.
So they could have come in later. So although you're saying, yes, it sounds crammed, but it's not necessarily going to have been focused on in that show.
No. Well, you said like they have pretty much like a 5-season like structured show, but it could expand to 8, and that to me says like they've got a lot of ideas, and it depends on which direction they can take it. So
because having a lot of ideas is good. It's knowing when to use them, when to cut them, and when to stretch them into something a little more.
Yeah. I think it'd have been nice to have got one more season of this just to end it, but I think that about a lot of shows where they
I know what you mean.
End on a cliffhanger. It's like, just give it a movie, just give it a series, just another season, just give it something to actually give the viewers who watched it some closure, because it just lingers in their heads until they can't take it anymore.
But no, this show got cancelled in August of 2019, so not long after it ended, basically. Along with that Lobo spin-off, it got cancelled by Sci-Fi due to low numbers, which is a shame. But I always feel like I like shows with low numbers.
Yeah.
That's probably why we did these bonus podcast episodes.
Yeah.
Do you have any more to say on this? Is there anything you'd like to bring up, highlight?
Not really. I think I've said it all.
Any reason you think people should watch it?
I think if you like sci-fi settings and environments, and you're probably interested in like the politics of those other like worlds and things like that, I think there's something here that you'd really get into. It's a very rich world to enter, I think.
Yeah.
And there's never really a dull moment. I don't think there's a bad episode, but there's only 20 episodes anyway, so I think it's worth checking out. Even if you just think, what was Krypton like? Just give this show a watch, because I think it's worth it, really.
There's also some actual Earth history inspire this show, which I think adds to that element, which doesn't surprise me with it being David S. Goyer, because I know I'm pretty sure he worked on the show Rome or Da Vinci's Demons, which is, and he has a fascination with history, and I think the other showrunner had done, somebody else on this show had worked on some other sort of like historical like fiction or just historical based show anyway, and I think that shows up in this show. It's there, that like, because you can feel ancient Rome in parts of this show, and I think it does that quite well. What? You looked at me as if you don't agree.
Just trying to think of ancient Rome and this and compare the two.
Well, there's
not enough red capes.
No, but it's burning away, isn't it, in season 1?
I know people complained about this show looking dark, and it's like, this is dark times for Krypton. Visually dark.
Exactly, yeah.
Some people complained it weren't the crystal Krypton of the Reeve movie. It's, again, different Krypton.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the like ancient Rome stuff mostly comes in season 1, with the focus around Daron Vex, played by Elliot Cowan. He's the chief magistrate of Kandor.
Yeah.
And I think he's also Nyssa Vex's father.
Yeah, he is.
And I think that's where that more like traditional like Roman sort of stories, or Greek even, feel like they're coming from. But costuming, I think, highlights our history in a way with this nice sci-fi twist on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you're interested in Superman mythology and Krypton, it's definitely worth a watch, because I feel like it's actually telling a story worth telling. And that's the sad part about it getting cancelled for me. Any more?
Yeah, I'm just looking for it.
Oh, okay.
And I have done on a lot of the... it's 3 costume designers. Lindsay Pugh, who did 10 episodes in 2019, so that'll be season 2. And oddly, Bojana Nikitovic did 5 episodes in the first season, and Vavara Advadushko did 1 episode in... So that's probably the pilot. So I don't know who did the other 5 episodes, so... Great job on their part, anyway.
Yeah.
They all did great on
But I like the costuming on this. I think Seg's got a pretty cool jacket. I mean, it's just like a leather bomber jacket in a way. Or like a racer jacket more than a bomber jacket. But there's detailings in it, I think, that really add layers and textures and kind of outline the character. One of my favourite costumes is probably what Nyssa wears.
Yeah.
It's that really like textured top with the collar and stuff. And I think they've tried to give her some headwear before as well. That kind of works.
Yeah.
It, like I said, it feels grounded, but actually sci-fi and lived in at the same time. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's similar to the new Dune movies.
Yeah,
the fashion in there is similar, I think.
Yeah.
There's a big overlap, apart from this was first.
Yeah, you tell them. One of the costume designers that do work on Dune Prophecy. That's the latest.
Yeah, that's the... Is it HBO?
I think so. Sorry. That one is Bojana Nikitovic. It works on that. I was just looking them up now. See what else they did.
Any more you want to say?
No.
That's it for me.
Just that, because, like I said, you mentioned the costuming.
I guess now it's to decide, was the show worth getting killed? Should they have cancelled it? Or was it cancelled too soon?
I think we've pretty much said, haven't we, while discussing it? This show should have gone on quite a bit longer.
Definitely. I mean, just 1 season.
Yeah.
1 season more would have been nice, at least, just to at least make it a close.
Yeah.
This show should not have been cancelled. Therefore, it was cancelled too soon, and we've been cancelled too soon. This is the end of the bonus episode of Cancelled Too Soon, the Krypton edition. Thank you for joining us this week. And if you haven't already, click like and subscribe. A glowing review would also be appreciated. We are Cynic_critique on X and Instagram, Cynic-critique on Blue Sky. Links to those and more can be found in the show's description. And remember to join us again on Saturday as we're back with our standard episode of Cynic Critique, and ready to dive into some of James Gunn's earlier work, focusing on superheroes as well, with the specials and Super. And maybe, if you're lucky, or unlucky, depending on how you view it, we'll drop a mini-sode on James Gunn's Superman, which is due out Friday. Thank you, and goodbye.
Goodbye.